When you retire, you may get a chance to go to football heaven. This is football heaven.
Hey guys, welcome to a special edition of the Mission Podcast. I'm your host, Jameer Howerton. Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium is the site of the 2022 USFL playoff games and the championship game. Saturday, June 25th, 3 p.m., the Philadelphia Stars will face the New Jersey Generals, and later that night at 8 p.m., the New Orleans Breakers versus the Birmingham Stallions. And then Sunday, July 3rd, is the championship game, all going down at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. Please visit HOFvillage.com and USFL.com for exclusive ticket offers. Well, to help me break down all of this amazing action that's happening right here at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium and the Pro Football Hall of Fame is no other than Syracuse University great. Drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, there he was a three-time Super Bowl champion, and then he went on to Fox Sports as their top game analyst, and now he is the new Executive Vice President of Football Operations for the USFL. Mr. Daryl Johnston is joining us right here on The Mission. Well, sir, thank you so much for giving us your time to join us right here on The Mission. Before we dive in, I want to put the podcast in its proper perspective and just talk about the lessons that you've learned from the game of football, from your time at Syracuse to the Dallas Cowboys, and then going on to be a successful game analyst for Fox Sports. If you could talk about some of those lessons that you learned from the gridiron that you carry with yourself today.
You know, what you learn on a football field, I think really what you learn on any competitive field, any competitive court, any competitive sheet of ice, you know, athletics provides so many opportunities to teach lessons, to build character, to develop integrity. That's one of the big things that I get myself involved with these spring leagues for, are those opportunities, because I know how much it helped me. So, you know, for me, the accountability factor, you know, teamwork, you know, we hear a lot of those character pieces that can be put together, you know, in a competitive nature when you're playing sports. And for me, football takes it a little bit farther than other sports. And I tell people that because, you know, once you get past high school, you don't really have that two-way guy anymore. So when you go to college, if you're fortunate and blessed enough to make it to the professional level, in the game of football, you play on the offensive side of the ball. You may have a little bit of special teams, but you'll turn that over to the defense. The defensive players will turn that over to the offense. So there's a tremendous amount of trust that has to be developed, confidence in everybody to do their job. And I think that that's really, for me, where that accountability component comes in. You know, here in the USFL and the other spring leagues that I've been involved with, when our players come back to us from the NFL and they're trying to chase that dream, a lot of times it's not what is going on from a measurable standpoint, a football IQ standpoint. Sometimes it's some of the other things. It's punctuality. It's the accountability factor. It's being a pro in everything you do, not just in the game of football, but in everything you do. And I think that those are some of the lessons that I've learned from football that I've been able to apply to life. And Dick McPherson was my college head coach at Syracuse University. And Dick McPherson was more like a father figure than a head coach, you know, during our time there. And for me, you know, the things that I learned at Syracuse are still things that I carry to this day. They're things that I've shared, you know, with my kids. You know, the work ethic that you develop. There is no gray area. And I tell this to people every time they bring up, you know, the culture of athletics. I said, listen, the way we function, if you looked at corporate America and you filmed yourself at your job all day long, you had to go out and perform against other people on a continual basis. There is no gray in who can do the job and who can't do the job. So when somebody comes to a coach and says, I should be playing ahead of that person, I'm better than he is, the coach can say, do you want me to show you on game film? Do you want me to show you on practice tape? Do you want me to show you how many treatments you've missed, how many weightlifting sessions you've missed compared to him? there's nothing about athletics that is gray. It is all black and white. And I love functioning in that environment because you either win or you lose. And that is something that I've struggled to actually adjust to outside of the game of football, because once you get into the real world, you get into shades of gray. You get into other areas where it doesn't matter how hard you work or what you do. There's just certain things that you're not going to be able to accomplish because of other factors that are going on.
Wow, that's amazing, sir. And when you look at your career post the gridiron, you went on to Fox Sports, where you were amazing, one of the top game analysts, and now you're in this new position as the new executive vice president of football operations for the USFL. Let's talk about that challenge and why you wanted to take on that challenge, sir.
It goes back to what I touched on just a little bit there in that first question. Is I feel like I'm an ambassador for the game of football. It's provided me with so much. It's the reason I'm married to my wife. I was in Dallas, Texas, and we met there. If I'm not playing professional football, that never happens. So from that point on, it has brought me my family. The financial rewards, are great for a young guy coming out of college. But for me, it's so much more. It takes you on that life path. So I've always felt like I needed to give back to the game. And this is one of those ways to do it. When we were in San Antonio in the Alliance, we were able to get guys back to the NFL, but not just get them back. I had one of the coaches in the USFL, share with me something that's really changed my way of looking at this. These guys have been to the NFL before. They've had that opportunity, but they didn't stay there. So our job is not to get them there. Our job is to make sure that when they have that opportunity the next time, that they stay there. And that's what we're trying to do. And we were able to do that in the Alliance. We were able to do that in the XFL the first time around when I was in Dallas. But now with the USFL, to be able to have your hands on things at the league level, not just at an individual team level, but on the league level, and be able to put policies in place and be able to do things to help these guys continue to chase that dream, give them that opportunity to get back to the NFL. But having had the time to have been around, our 8 great head coaches and the staffs that they've assembled, hopefully we have kind of figured out exactly why they haven't stayed there, what it is that they're missing, whether it's in their football game, their character set, whatever it is that they're not able to stay in the NFL. We've sent them back with a better opportunity to achieve that goal. So that's the hook that gets me. And I've had people tell me, that's a dangerous thing, to get excited about. But when I see some of our guys in these other opportunities on the field on Sunday at the NFL level that wouldn't have had that opportunity had it not been for what we were able to do for them, that's the juice that keeps me going.
Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium is the site for the USFL's playoff game and championship game. Why did the USFL and Fox decide to bring the games here to Canton, Ohio?
Well, it's kind of funny because it was out of necessity at our end. So down here in Birmingham, when we signed the contract for our season, there was a conflict with a Garth Brooks concert in week 9. So we had to move week 9. But then after that, the World Games, a contract which had been signed years ago, and it was still kind of up in the air with the COVID pandemic, is it actually going to take place, is coming in right behind us. And so we were able to finish our regular season, but we're not going to be able to get into our playoffs. So we were going to have to move. And, it's like everything in life, right? If you're going to pack up and move, it doesn't matter if you're going to move 5 miles or 500 miles, you're moving. So why not go all the way to Canton? If we're going to move this whole operation, why not go to Canton, Ohio, the history that's there for the game of football, to be on Tom Benson Field in our inaugural year, to have our 4 playoff teams have the opportunity to create a memory, to go to Tom Benson Field in Canton, Ohio, and compete for the first championship in the USFL. I mean, it didn't get any better. And I remember when some of the people at Fox hinted at this being a possibility, and I'm like, possibility? We should be going there. We should be going there anyways. I mean, if you can do that, that should become a tradition. And I've got my fingers crossed that it does. It's a lot of heavy lifting for a lot of people to pull this off, but I think the reward on the backside is going to be tremendous. And I cannot wait for our players to be able to get to Canton, Ohio. I've been blessed to have been there on multiple occasions because we've had so many players from our 90s Cowboy team go into the Hall of Fame. So to go up to their induction ceremonies, I've played in the Hall of Fame game as a Dallas Cowboy at that stadium. I am going to be watching these guys championship weekend as they go through the hall and the tours, as they just kind of soak in, just the history that is there. I am so excited for our guys to be able to have this experience.
Along with the games, the hall is opening up a news exhibit, a brand new USFL exhibit. What is that going to mean to the players and to the coaches and just to the overall culture of the USFL?
We're going to have guys that are there on that trip that are going to see something that's tied to them in that display for the USFL. And how amazing is that? These guys don't know that. They don't know that they're in the hall right now. They're in the hall. I mean, that's unbelievable. So I just think the experience that they're going to have when they get up there is going to be something that's going to be life-changing. I think it's just one of those opportunities where football is no longer just a game. It becomes bigger than that. And you start to see that. And that's one of the things, that we try to impress upon these young guys. This is so much more than just a game. And I'm hoping after our 2 weekends up in Canton that the guys that had that experience come back, they talk to the 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs. And that's going to light a fire inside them to make sure that they get an opportunity to be a part of that special weekend if we're in Canton again next year.
That Friday, you are bringing 260 players and coaches to the hall for the ribbon cutting, and you got a special guest for them. If you want to tell us here on the mission, the guest that you had that's going to address them, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those moments, we're trying to do anything we can to make this really, really special for our guys. We're so grateful for everything that they've done. I mean, we've really, really challenged them this season. We started out the year with a 45-man roster and 38 on game day. They've gone through training camp. We're in the heat of Alabama right now. I mean, it's been over 100 degrees with the heat indexes for the last 4 or 5 days. And these guys just continue to grind, so I wanted this, not only to be a great opportunity, but we wanted to say thank you. Everybody in the front office wanted to be able to say thank you to not only our players, but our staffs for all the hard work they've put in here on year one. So we wanted to make it really special. And we've got Jimmy Johnson, who's going to address the guys, when they're there on Friday. And I've seen videos of Jimmy addressing the University of Miami team in that setting, in a football setting. And I can't wait because, I was blessed to have been a part of the teams that Jimmy was coaching in Dallas. And, his passion for the game, his drive for success is something that's infectious. And I just think that this is another one of those opportunities that these 2 weekends up in Canton, the things that we're going to be able to provide are going to be so unique and so special. And I think that Jimmy Johnson, having the opportunity to hear him speak, having him actually kind of be with us that whole day on Friday, he's going to be in Thursday night. He's going to actually kind of come through the tours with us, is going to stay and spend time for our coaches to be able to visit with him and establish a rapport there and ask him questions, I think is going to be invaluable as well. So it was one of those things that you're like, yeah, I'll give this a try, but gosh, this is a pretty big ask for a guy that probably has a million asks like this all the time. And so we were so flattered and so thrilled when he decided to come.
That's great. As you can see behind me, it's artifacts from your inaugural year. But, Mr. Johnson, if you could just talk about Saturday, June 25th, the playoff game, the Philadelphia Stars versus the New Jersey Generals, and then following that night game, the New Orleans Breakers versus the Birmingham Stallions. How proud are you of these 4 teams, and what should fans look out for?
Yeah, I'm very happy for these 4 teams, and really what I saw happen in our league, and this is one of the things that I tell people all the time, number one, it's hard to win a football game. And number two, every time a team comes together, they have to learn how to win together. Yeah, this is the first time that these guys have ever played together. So there was going to be a growing process. And the 4 playoff teams were the 4 teams that grew up the fastest together. And it was funny because I remember talking to our strength staff, and they're around all 8 teams all the time. And this is at a point right around midway during the season. I think Birmingham might have been 5-0 or 6-0. And we were down in the weight room, and I was like, I'm so surprised that Birmingham is the undefeated team at this time. There's 2 other teams that I thought, if we're talking about somebody being undefeated at this point, I would have gone with 2 other choices. And they were all like, absolutely not. Birmingham gelled as a team coming out of training camp. I mean, they hit week 1, with the ground underneath them. They were running. I think that first game against New Jersey, New Jersey's right there, at the end of the game. It looks like we're going to overtime, and then Jamar Smith makes a great play and they win in regulation. So, New Jersey starts out 0-1, but boom, they bounce right back. Watching New Orleans grow through the course of the year, had a couple of tough losses, 2 to Birmingham, but just kind of bounced back. And then Philadelphia is my outlier. Philadelphia, Case Cookus has come in and just played outstanding at the quarterback position. They're our highest scoring team in the USFL this year. So they're a team that's definitely under the radar. I think the other 3, there's going to be a lot of people, if they're USFL fans, are going to be familiar with them. I don't know how familiar people are going to be with Philadelphia, but that would be my sleeper in this group of 4. They're a little bit gritty. These other teams we talked about learning how to win and other teams in the league, finding a way to lose. Philadelphia is kind of that gritty team. The moniker, the Philadelphia, tied to the city of Philadelphia, it kind of suits them, right? They're just gritty. So I'm real anxious to see that first game, New Jersey against Philadelphia. And I think it's going to be strange because they also finished the regular season playing against each other. So they're going to play back-to-back weeks. And there'll be some strategy there with Mike Riley and his staff and Bart Andrus and his staff as to how much we show in week 10 in the season finale. How much do we set the opponent up in week 10, showing them something that we're going to take a spin on that following week as we get into that first round of the playoffs. So lots of cool stuff to keep your eyes on.
Just to switch gears a bit on a personal note, you mentioned how you came to Canton and you played in the game here, the kickoff the season, and then you were part of some of your colleagues and your former teammates enshrinements. What was the favorite part of coming to Canton and just being in and around that energy, sir?
Yeah, my first time at Canton was 1976. Doing the family trip from Western New York down to Florida, and we kind of zigzagged. The family zigzagged and hit a couple of spots. And our first stop was actually Canton, Ohio. So I was 10 years old on my first trip, and it was just the museum, the iconic portion, of what is now the Hall of Fame Museum. So that was kind of my first dose of professional football and the history and probably, where the passion for me started. And then since that time being back, whether it's to play the game, going back for my teammates' induction ceremonies is obviously, one of the great things that I have an opportunity to do, to attend some of the events that are there that are part of that entire weekend. The Sunday breakfast is my favorite because everybody's kind of all the heavy lifting is done. They've gotten through their speech, the party's over, and there's a relaxed kind of stance from everybody that's a part of it. And the conversation and the dialogue is fantastic. But the relationship that Emmett Smith and I had together as fullback and running back, obviously is something very, very special to me. And that'll always be, one of my proudest moments, regarding the game of football is, the message that he sent to me during the course of his induction.
That's a very intimate relationship because I was blessed to work for the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. And I remember Big O'Neal was at the New York Jets and he was leading the way for then Adrian Morrell and Richie Anderson. But then, he would go on and lead the way for LaDainian Tomlinson, and he was there to induct him in. And it's just great to see that fullback position. When you think of that fullback position, it's a dinosaur position, but would you like to see that position more represented here at the Hall?
I would. And I know it's hard. It really is hard because there's not a lot of statistical standards that you can kind of tie to that position.
Right.
The fullbacks that are in the Hall are kind of the old school fullbacks that were kind of the primary ball carrier in those offenses. So the modern day fullback is kind of it's kind of a difficult position to evaluate because if you look at the decade of the 90s, which I consider to be the best decade for that modern era fullback guy. Tom Rathman, up around 100 catches during one of his seasons. Larry Centers over 100 catches during one of his seasons. Mike Allstott and everything that Mike Allstott did. Lorenzo Neal, you talked about Lorenzo Neal and what he did. Sam Gash. There's so many great players there that were in that position during the decade of the 90s, but they all had that little thing that they did really, really well. That maybe the others didn't. And so it's really hard, to set that standard for that position. if you look at the other positions in the Hall of Fame, there's a way to base it. And a lot of that is, one of the first indicators is how many times has this player been to the Pro Bowl? That ultimate honor. Well, we didn't get to go to the Pro Bowl until 1993. So that's one that skews it, and then it's statistical. Well, we don't get to carry the football a whole lot. For me, really get this position some notoriety, we've got to talk about Rocky Blyer, who's kind of that last hybrid guy. But then we got to get into the Jim Braxtons. We got to get into the Matt Sueys. We got to get into some of those pure fullbacks. And, when the lead blocker for O.J. Simpson, is struggling to get recognition, when the lead blocker for Walter Payton is struggling to get recognition, we've got to find a different way to evaluate this position because it can't be done statistical. So you've really got to kind of dig into that film and really look at the guys and see how important they were. What was their role on that team and how well did they achieve that role? And that's why I think it's always going to be a very, very challenging position to be able to evaluate. Right. I think the most disappointing thing to me when we talk about that position is even on the all-decade teams, it's not represented. And we just went through the 90s and all those great players. Right. I've always said I'd love to see what people think about the decade of the 90s at the fullback position and who would have been the all-decade fullback, because, boy, there were some great ones, during our time together. And I think we all looked up to each other. I think we all found parts in the other guys' games that we wished we could do as well as they did. There's a tremendous amount of respect within that group that played together and against each other. So I'd love to see, what all the guys that really, kind of dig into that and evaluate that, would come out saying, here's our list of guys through the 90s that would be in the rankings for the position of all-decade fullback.
Wow. You talk about Sam Gash, just remember of Coach Madden. He really, as a young kid watching the game, he really educated all of us by pointing out your lead blocking, the offensive lineman lead blocking, because like you said, you always follow the guys with the football, but you never see the guys who actually make it happen for them to get in the end zone. And that was well said, sir. Just before we let you go, just want to know about your dream, your vision of the USFL. Over the course of, as this grows, sir?
I think what we want to do is we want to be a standalone professional league. We want to be an alternative route to getting to the NFL. We want to be an alternative route, as I said before, teaching players the why and how to stay in the NFL. And I think that's one of the big things that we have to do immediately is when our players come to us is, what's your why? Do you want to get back to the NFL? Do you want to keep chasing that dream? Do you want us to try and help you stay there? Or do you just love this game and you're resolved to the fact that, hey, my NFL window is closed, but I love this game. This is my only opportunity to continue to play this game at this level. And I want to keep playing it for a couple more years. So it's really important for us to kind of find the why and then adjust to that. But yeah, I'd love for us to be that option, because what's happening now is guys are getting lost in the numbers in the NFL. We've got guys from the college game who maybe need a little bit work on specific parts of their craft by position because the college restricts time. Well, then the NFL started restricting time. So we're getting some guys at certain positions at the professional level that still need a little bit of work, and they just don't have the time. You hear it all the time from the coaches. If he could just play some games, if we could just get him into some game scenarios, whether it's the offensive line, the quarterback position, kickers, there's several positions where playing the game is the most important teacher that you're going to have, but that luxury is not afforded at the NFL level right now. So for us to be able to be an alternative route for these guys to get down and definitely do that, get out there and play in the game, find out how quick this game does move, even at this level. Is it going to move as fast as the NFL? No, but you're going to have to be able to learn and adjust on the fly during the course of a game. You're going to have to make your adjustments. I think that's one of the most important things that we're going to be able to do. So for me, I want to be able to have that relationship with the NFL. I want us to be able to work together and grow this game where nobody's ever going to compete with the NFL. There is no competition out there, but we're going to have that relationship that has a lot of synergy between it. And I think that's one of the things moving forward that we would like to do is where can we help each other? Where can we be beneficial to each of us? So that is my vision, my dream. When I look at it, is a standalone professional league that is an alternative route to providing players the opportunity to get to the NFL, to stay in the NFL, that has a great working relationship with the NFL. And we become, kind of that group working together that's providing guys the opportunity, to chase that dream and continue to grow this game. Because I think everybody that's been a part of the game of football,
Mhm.
it gets into your blood, and it's hard, for that to get out. And you start running into a lot of the people that are wired exactly the same as you are. And then some really, really great things can happen. So, that's our vision here with the USFL moving forward.
Well, sir, we thank you so much for giving us your time to join us right here on the mission. And when you're here in Canton, make sure you get the opportunity to go to Centennial Plaza, because we have the player pylons on, and there are names of all of the players that have played over the course of the 100 years of the NFL. So you're definitely represented and celebrated right here in Canton, Ohio as well, sir.
Looking forward to it. I haven't had a chance to get to the park yet. So that's definitely going to be one of my stops, even if I got to sneak off on my own.
Mr. Daryl Johnston, sir, right here on the mission. Wow, what an amazing story. And we can't wait to see you guys here in Canton, Ohio for the USFL playoffs and championship game. And don't forget, visit HOFvillage.com and USFL.com for all of your exclusive ticket offers. Well, next week, we're going to be honored to be joined by Pro Football Hall of Famer from the class of 2016, head coach Tony Dungy. That's right, we're going to pick up right where we left off and honor the members of this year's Award of Excellence to the assistant coaches. Well, I'm Jameer Howerton. I'll see you next time.